Καλώς ήρθατε στη σημερινή εκπομπή του Filthy Talks, του podcast της Φοιτητικής Ένωσης για το Φύλο και την Ισότητα Φύλης. Ονομάζομαι Παντζαρτσίδη και είμαι η συντονίστρια του τομέα ακαδημαϊκών δραστηριοτήτων της Φύλης. Και στο σημερινό μας επεισόδιο θα συζητήσουμε για ένα θέμα το οποίο έχει γενικά γίνει γνωστό παγκοσμίως, ίσως όμως όχι στην πλήρη του έκταση. Και μιλάω για τις διαδηλώσεις στο Ιράν, για τις εξελίξεις που προέκυψαν μετά τη δολοφονία της 22χρονης Μάχσα Αμίνι. Επειδή φυσικά αυτό είναι ένα θέμα για το οποίο εμείς ενημερωνόμαστε μέσω των mainstream δυτικών μέσων μαζικής ενημέρωσης, θεωρήσαμε ότι θα ήταν ίσως καλύτερο, σίγουρα καλύτερο μάλλον, να έχουμε ένα άτομο το οποίο έχει δει τα πράγματα αυτά εκ των έσω. Έχουμε καλέσει λοιπόν σήμερα μαζί μας μια γυναίκα από το Ιράν, την Νίνα, η οποία θα μας μιλήσει για τη δική της εμπειρία και την κατάσταση στο Ιράν από τη δική της οπτική ως ένα άτομο που κατάγεται από εκεί. Και θέλω να ενημερώσω εδώ ότι η συζήτηση θα γίνει στα αγγλικά. Θα υπάρχουν φυσικά υπότιτλοι στο YouTube. Θα ξεκινήσω τώρα τη συζήτηση με την Νίνα στα αγγλικά. Hi Nina, hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Well, I
That's
guess
a big
I'm
question.
okay. Yes, that's a very good question. I'm okay. How are you?
I'm okay too, thank you. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation to be here today.
Oh, it's my honor. Thank you for inviting me.
So, as I said before in Greek, we know about Mahsa Amini's murder and the uprising after her murder only through what was broadcasted by Western media. So I'd like you to guide us through her story and through what happened after her murder in Iran.
Yes, I would love to do that. So, as you know, well, her real name is Jina. I don't know if you knew that. So, she's an Iranian, or she was an Iranian Kurdish woman. And many people know her as Mahsa Amini. And the reason for that is in Iran, you have to have an Iranian name, and you're not allowed to have another name like a Kurdish name. So her real name is Jina, but in her passport it was written Mehsa, and but her friends and family called her Jina. So
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so that's the reason behind a lot of people call her Jina, or then you hear Mahsa. So I just wanted to make this first point clear. And so she came to Tehran for holidays, I guess, to visit some. Basically, it was for holidays. We don't know the real reason of this holiday. But the morality police caught her for what is called improper hijab. And that can mean that just a bit of her hair is showing. And they just took her into the van. And basically, people in the van later on reported that she was beaten in the van. And the reason for that was most probably because she was Kurdish. And so then later on, there was a video in the internet where she got unconscious in the station. That video went viral, and a few days later, we got the message that she died. So this is everything that happened. The Iranian government tried to cover this up as in she had a tumor, or it was a brain attack. So that's the reason why she got unconscious. But I mean, family members of her said, no, she was a very healthy woman. She didn't have anything. I mean, she was just 20 years old. And it was quite clear that what happened there was because of the morality police. And just like hours after her death, there were already people started protesting for that, so everyone was informed, and this was the origin of everything. And on her tombstone, her family wrote also, I have just this quote here, and it's translated, of course, but it's written, "Beloved Jina, you will not die. Your name will turn into a symbol." And that's exactly kind of what happened afterwards, because people used her as a symbol and were like, this is enough. We are not gonna stand anymore and stand silent anymore. We're gonna go on the street and we're gonna start protesting. People start to cut their hair. This is something that a lot of people saw in the Western media as well, right? To cut a piece of your hair. which is coming from a Kurdish tradition, actually. And it was a sign of we're against this oppression. And people just continued shouting Jiyan Azadi, which was woman life freedom, or Zan Zendegi Azadi. So it's like the Kurdish version, or the Persian version of this woman life freedom.
And those protests are still on today, right? After so many weeks have passed. I mean, her murder was on 16th of September, right?
Yes, exactly. So the murder is now almost 3 months. And this is this is why we are calling it now a revolution, I guess, because it just did not stop. So in other demonstrations we had before that, in Iran, the demonstrations stopped at some point. The government kind of won those demonstrations and they shut down everything. But this time, this is like an ongoing event, and people are it's just getting more and more and more. And every time throughout these 3 months, the government, of course, responded to the demonstrations, not in an understanding way, but more of an, okay, if you're gonna do this, we're gonna oppress you even more. And this made people just more angry, and people got even more who got into the street. With every person who got killed, or we saw raped, or any child that got dead, it was just all the Iranians got just even more together and were like, okay, we cannot handle this anymore. We're just gonna protest more and more and more. This has to stop. So the way the government is actually handling this is bringing the people even more together.
Yeah, that's we see that it is a very big revolution. I mean, the scale of the protests seems amazing. And I mean, I didn't know that her Kurdish name was Jina, and that her Iranian name was Mahsa. So this goes to show us that we don't learn everything through Western media. We don't learn the full story. So again, thank you so much for being here to tell us the full story. Can you tell us about life in Iran under this current oppressive regime in general?
In general, you mean before this revolution? What happened? Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Iran, so it's very controversial, full of controversy, because you basically grew up living two lives. You grew up with that. Your parents teach you that. And that is, every family is doing something illegal, kind of, because you have this public life in the streets where you need to be in a certain way, but also in the public way, like whatever is in the street, like half of it is illegal, you know? And then you are in the houses behind the door. And then, I mean, I experienced the most beautiful life there, because behind the doors, everything was just full of warmth. And this Iranian culture is just so specific. And we were dancing all the time, singing, and we were gathering together, and we were trying to educate ourselves, and we were talking about politics, about literature, about like all of these different spectrum that culture can bring you. And we were celebrating life behind doors. But then, I mean, outside, it's not like that, because, for example, I cannot have a boyfriend, or even if I'm in a car with another person who would be the opposite sex, the morality police can arrest you. So let's say that loving someone is illegal before marriage. It's very controversial.
Nina, you just talked about morality police. Can you tell us a bit more about what this is?
Yes, the morality police is a system of itself. So it's not it does not belong to all the police together. And there are people who were just checking if you are behaving properly regarding the Islamic law. So, and what a lot of people don't know about this is that the morality police would not only arrest women, but if a man is with a t-shirt or with shorts, which would be quite normal in the summer, right? They would get arrested as well. But people like this does not happen that often because many know, and then they just wear longer shorts, and that's much easier to handle. But the morality police does not only tell you what to wear, but they can tell you like, okay, makeup is illegal. Like, why are you having this color of nail polish? The color of your scarf is too vivid, something like that. And it's just whatever they want to. It's very arbitrarily or the length of your jacket is too short, or even if you have everything covered under your jacket, which we call manto, under the manto, then they can still say like, why is it open?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it's like small things that even if you don't see anything, then they will ask you like, why are you wearing this? So this is the main reason why they are there. They just want to. They also get a lot of money for this, so they try to, I think, put fear into people. To arrest a lot of people, even if there is no real reason behind it, and to create this fear. And like, if you don't take care of every aspect of what you're wearing, then the probability that you will get arrested will be very high.
So I imagine they attack mainly women, LGBTQ people, of course, Kurdish people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also other minorities. I mean, Kurdish people are not the only minority we have. For example, Baha'i, which is another branch of a religion that is a minority in Iran, and they have been experiencing discrimination as well. And there are a lot of other religious groups or ethnic groups that have been experiencing discrimination quite far. I mean, this discrimination goes as far as in you're not allowed to study or go to school or go to university. Women are allowed to go to university, but if you're Kurdish but if you're Baha'i, for example, then you're not allowed to.
That's really terrifying to hear that. I imagine that you cannot express yourself in public freely, which is really, really horrifying, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, and of course I imagine that LGBTQ people as well don't have a lot of freedom due to all these reasons you just mentioned.
That's correct. I mean, the Islam is not very... I'm not even sure how to say it, but it's the Islamic version that is in Iran. Let me just call it like that. It's against the LGBTQ plus community completely. So they are not accepted at all. And if you out yourself, I mean, you cannot even out yourself, because if you get caught, you might get killed. So, it's very problematic to be in that kind of community in Iran.
Yeah. So I think that according to what you say, minorities live in a state of fear, of constant fear. How does this oppression work in a woman's everyday life? I mean, you, for example, have you experienced attacks based on your gender?
Yes. I mean, I got arrested a few times just when I was... I only lived in Iran until I was 18, but even in that period, and I was a minor, I got arrested a few times. And I mean, 2 times it was only because of the hijab, and it was mainly because they were there to get money. So what was really difficult about it, at some point I completely ignored it, and I was like, okay, you just want money, take me, and I will, like, okay, but your whole day gets just ruined when you get caught. That was my experience until then. I think with the new president, a lot of things changed. And I mean, the story is now 10 years old.
Yeah.
But your day is getting ruined. Your parents are, I mean, just imagine in the Western world, your child gets arrested, your parents will be horrified and they will be angry with you, right?
Yeah.
Because they think like you did something wrong by law. My parents were just happy that they see me, and we're shouting at the police. So just imagine this difference, as a child or as a minor or as a person, the police is not your friend. The police is actually someone you should be afraid of.
Yeah.
People can be, if you trust them, if you find out who the person is, you can trust them. But even the person you're talking to, you never know who that is. So you don't know what you're allowed to tell them or not. You cannot have this communication with strangers, actually, because you should be always careful with everything. So it's a careful way of living. And as soon you try to not be outside, you don't walk outside really much. Biking is not allowed using a bicycle is not allowed for women in Iran. You just take a taxi and then you go from A to B and then do whatever you have to do. You go home. You're always inside, basically, to be secured and to be sure that the police does not tell you anything. This is how you live.
That's really frightening, I think. I heard that many women says that any one of us could be in Jina Mani's place. Every one of us could be arrested and led to her death because of the morality police. So they joined this demonstration, and they are still fighting for in her memory and for their freedom.
Yes, that's true. Because it really the first time I heard her story, I was also thinking that I could have been her, especially because I've got arrested before that. And I was just lucky to not get arrested, to not get killed. So it's everyone could have been. And I don't know many women who did not have some confrontations with the police, to be honest. So it's quite normal that we are confronted with the morality police in our lives, that they tell us all the time, like to cover your hair correctly, that you do something, or that you get caught and that they will arrest you and bring you. So, I mean, and again, I think I'm talking about 10 years ago, 12 years ago. I believe in the last year since the new president, it got much worse, as we can see.
Yeah.
The law got just much stricter and stricter and stricter. And now that they've killed someone because of this is just outrageous.
Yeah.
And they are continuing to kill people all the time.
Yes. So this is what I would like to talk about next, about the way Iranian people experience the protests. We've seen that there are even more deaths now, especially deaths of women that join the protests. Is this how do you see that? How do you experience that? And how do Iranian people experience that?
Well, I think in the last 3 months, it has been a very difficult time for us, because we are not only fighting, we're in kind of war without having weapons, and people are dying, and we take each person who dies as in we are mourning and we are sad, but then there are more people joining us because of this, or not even because of this, but they don't accept this anymore. Most people do not agree with this government, but I think it takes a specific kind of courage to go to the street, because once you are on the streets or you're showing that you're against the government, you're not only risking your own life, because a lot of people can live with risking their own lives, right? But they're risking their loved one's life, and that is what is more difficult, because the government brings you in a moral dilemma as well. So it does not end with you dying. They arrest maybe your aunt, your family members, and then they tell their family members if you say one word that we killed this person, then we're going to kill this person too, who is your loved one.
Yeah.
So, and you cannot talk about this. So that's how we experience. And every day we wake up, everyone, I don't know anyone who is not like that, or we wake up and check the news on our phones on social media, because the social media is our only media that brings information. There's no other media or news that can bring the information, because it's just the people's voice that we're talking about. It's not covered enough in the Western media, and there is no the journalists cannot be even in Iran and talk about the situation anyway. So they are only allowed to go, for example, that was in the beginning, they are only allowed to go where the protests are not happening, film that place, and they're not allowed to talk to any of the people in the demonstrations.
Yeah.
So how do you want to talk about that in news as a journalist?
Yeah.
And then you're risking your own life anyways. So it's only what we see on Instagram or on Twitter. What are the news that we are getting, basically. And that's how our everyday has been for the last 3 months. We wake up, we do whatever we have to do, as in working, but we're thinking all the time about what is happening in our home country. We try to connect with other Iranians, and especially when you're outside, either you have some family members, but if you just arrive for example, to Germany now, then it gets even more difficult, because you don't even know who to trust here.
Yes.
Because people also in Europe or in the US and they're Iranians, but they are working with the government. So you just don't know who to trust, who to talk to. And it gets complicated like that.
Do you have to take special care when you are in social media so that you don't identify yourself, so that no one knows who you really are, so that you don't put yourself in danger?
Definitely. I mean, there are a lot of brave people who are saying, okay, I'm not going to do that, because they don't, they say like it's gonna be a revolution that we're gonna win, so it doesn't matter anyway. But there are definitely a lot of people who are cautious about this, and who are not putting their names on anything, and who are not talking about this on social media. So those people who are talking about all of this on social media are the reason why we get the information, like the public can get the information of what is happening, and that itself, only a post itself, brings a lot of braveness in it. So yeah.
This is also a thing I would like to discuss with you. The way the Western media gives information about the demonstrations. Do you see that it is confined, that it is not the whole story?
I think in the beginning it was even much, much, much more. In the beginning, they didn't talk about it nearly at all until, we had this huge demonstrations all over the Western world. There was one that was in the very beginning, like 2 weeks into the revolution. And we had demonstrations in 150 cities all over the world, with like millions on the streets, million Iranians that are outside of Iran. And they are on the streets fighting for this. And the Western media did not cover it enough.
Yeah.
And then there was this really huge demonstration in Berlin. And also that one, I participated in that demonstration, and then I waited for the media to cover it. And it was like on the news, it was a 15 or 30 second line.
Yeah.
You just have to imagine like how angry I was. And then they talked about, I don't know, some snake that was dangerous or something ridiculous. And I was asking myself, what is happening with the world? So in the beginning, it was not there at all. And I think it's really, it's because of the length of the demonstrations, the protests that are this revolution, that it is being covered, but it's not being covered enough at all. I think it's also because Iran has been isolated from the world a bit. for quite some time, and also because of the nuclear deal, which is like, if it's about the nuclear deal, everyone talks about it, but if it's not about the nuclear deal, no one talks about it.
Yes. And also journalism is quite West-centric, so anything that doesn't happen in the West is not really a problem for the mainstream media in the West.
That is true, but then something happened where I was again asking myself, why is the Western media not, or why are the people in the West not covering it? And that was when they found Iranian drones in Ukraine.
Yeah.
I mean, that Russia and Iran are allies is not a secret. But people are not talking about it at all. And people, like, the Iranian people are fighting for the same thing that the Western people would want to, and that is freedom, that's democracy. And they don't want what has happened, like that the drones are sent to Ukraine. We don't, like, as an Iranian, I can say we don't want that. At all. And we are fighting for it. And then when the news is not covering it enough, then that's sad, because then you're giving the government actually a point.
Yes.
And from my understanding, it's mostly because of the nuclear deal. Like a lot of, like, the Europe has not clearly understood that the nuclear deal is, like, they kind of want to hope that maybe it's still happening.
Yeah.
So they are a bit more careful. Whereas, do you want to really have a deal with someone who is a terrorist? Do you as a European want that? Because the cost of the oil would be some Iranians' blood.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And
I think people do not understand this. I'm not sure. I mean, why it has not been covered yet. But this is basically, also the politicians say it like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So another example of how Western media doesn't cover the full story is the fact that we learned recently that the morality police would be abolished. And as we realize now, that is not actually the case. What happened there?
Yes, I think the reason for that is the news, or the Western media, wants to believe that there is a change and wants to believe that politicians might say the truth. And I mean, the politicians, they said that in Iran, that the morality police is going to, they're gonna cancel it. But then the law of the hijab did not go away.
Yeah.
So they can always find new ways to
enforce it, yes.
To enforce it. I mean, it is enforced. They can find new way into how to punish you and how to create fear and how to do everything. And they never said that, okay, it's going to go away and it's not going to come back. Yes. They never said something like that. They just said, like, okay, we're going to put it away. And I mean, this is a lie, because it does not help the situation at all. And I think what is very important to see here in general is the Iranian people are not going to accept, even, let's say, I don't believe that this happens. Let's say that they say, okay, we're gonna let the women not wearing a hijab. Even at that point, the people are not going to accept this. They don't want the government. They don't want the reformation. They want a revolution. They want this government to be gone. And I think this is very important to hear people's voice, because they're shouting since the beginning, we want a revolution. They do not shout, we want a reformation. We cannot accept this law. They say, like, this government has to go. It has to leave. We are not accepting this anymore. And that is very important. And that has not been covered. And then, like, I guess, like, people wanted to see that there is, like, some true, that something is winning, but no, nothing was winning. This was just a show.
That's
just
very important
for the outside.
Yeah. That's very important to understand. Yeah, that this distinction, that you don't want a reformation, you want the abolishment of an oppressive government.
Exactly.
Yeah. So after this, more demonstrations started to happen. And now you have informed us about some developments regarding some executions.
Exactly. So let me go back to, I think it was 1.5 months into the revolution. And I think around 14,000 people were already arrested at that point. And the parliament came together, and then they allowed this new law that if there are people are in prison because of protests, but they are saying that this is against God, what people are doing.
So it's against their religion, their religion, right?
It's against God. It's against God, right? Yeah. So they are against God, and since we are talking about the Islamic regime, anything that would be against God would get the death sentence. And now we saw the first execution. And at that point, when the law was enforced, it was, like I said, it was 14,000 people arrested already.
So all these people are up to execution.
Yes, exactly. And we have been saying that for a longer period of time, that with this law being enforced, that the real term would be the enemy of God, even, that this is an execution, and that they would do it because the current president that is right now, Raisi, he already executed a lot of people before. So we were expecting, we didn't want it, but like we knew that this man is very conservative, and that this man is capable of a lot of executions. And that's, we are afraid. Of course, we are afraid. And for the people who are arrested and who are in prison, I mean, the situation that they have is just so bad, because you think as in, oh, they are arrested, and then you don't hear their stories anymore, right?
Yes.
Because they are in prison, so they don't have a voice anymore. But we hear women shouting for anti-baby pills because they get raped after, like, daily basis, multiple times, and they get pregnant. They just want the anti-baby pill so they don't get a baby in that. Yes. In this scenario, right? And also the violence is incredible in these prisons. And another thing that they do is that they put the prisoners who should be like actual prisoners, they give them like some advantages or something like that to be against the political prisoners.
Wow.
So that there are inmate fights, for example.
Yeah.
So it goes, or they put them in like the isolations, like the political prisoners are the worst kind of prisoners for them. So they put them into isolation, and they, to be honest, I don't want to even imagine what is happening to them, but it is equivalent to what we saw from the Nazi regime.
Yes.
Maybe even worse.
Yeah.
So you can go that far with your imagination, and I let that with you.
That's, I mean, this is why it's very important to listen to your side, to the side of the people, and to see that we don't get the true story, we don't get the whole story. So these are the latest developments, I think, right? With the first execution.
Yes, that are the latest ones. It's correct.
So, is there anything that someone who wants to help you can do? Someone who wants to help the people of Iran can do?
Yes, and I think thank you for asking me this question, because I think that's a very, very important question. And that is, if you see a post, if you are getting some information, don't just leave it behind, especially in social media. If you have an Instagram account, share it. Share that post. Only if you share it, then another person will know about this. And like I said, our only power that we are getting is from social media.
Yes.
So also the politicians, our representatives, as in the European representatives, these people also only know what is happening through social media.
Yes.
So talking about this and giving the people in Iran a voice is the most important thing right now. And what we want, and maybe to make that clear, is that the European Parliament makes these sanctions on the people in the government. So we are already under sanctions. Whole Iran, just like what happened with Russia, but like this happened to us a few years ago, and we're still under under those sanctions. But it is important to sanction the people in the government, because those are the ones who have money here, right?
Yes.
And they have been saying that they are like the European Parliament has been saying that they are investigating these sanctions now for, I think, 2 months. 2 months.
2 months.
And with Russia, it happened in a week.
Yeah.
So this is the difference. I don't know what there is to think about or to investigate about when you have everything for Russia.
Yes.
And I mean, if you're a politician, there's all the story about what the real Iranian government is. It should not be something new for you. It's not like this country just happened and it's somewhere outside. Iran has been always an important country for business. Yes. And for other countries, because it has just so much oil and so much resources. And also for Europe, especially for Germany, it was a very, very important economic partner. It's not a small country that is like kind of like unimportant.
Yeah.
So politicians know about it, but the Western media is not covering it enough. And I still like the only reason I can give for them waiting for these sanctions is actually the deal that I talked about.
Yeah.
So if people who are European talk about it more, who want it more, then the parliament has no other choice, because we live at least in a democratic country. So our voices will be heard, and that is important. This is the way and how to help us to just hear our voice and just echoing it. It's about echoing voices right now.
Exactly, yeah. Thank you very much, Nina. This is exactly the reason why we wanted to invite you in this podcast, that
Thank
we
you so
learn
much.
your story. So thank you very much for being here today. I think that you've given us the full concept of what is happening right now in Iran. You have inspired us to help in any way we can to raise your voices in social media. So thank you.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for having me here. Thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε πάρα πολύ την Νίνα που ήταν μαζί μας σήμερα. Όπως ακούσατε, χρειάζεται να βοηθήσουμε όσο περισσότερο μπορούμε. Χρειάζεται να βοηθήσουμε μοιράζοντας όσο περισσότερα post μπορούμε στα social media. Είναι ο μόνος τρόπος για να ακουστούν οι φωνές των εξεγερμένων ανθρώπων. Εύχομαι να ήταν αυτή η συζήτηση για σας όσο διαφωτιστική ήταν και για μένα. Και εύχομαι να τα ξαναπούμε και στην επόμενη εκπομπή του podcast.